While jailed in Sana'a, journalist Tawfiq al-Mansouri was tortured for 45 days, along with two other journalists who he was sentenced to death by the Houthi militias in 2020, kept in solitary confinement for several weeks. This report has more details.
Journalist Tawfiq al-Mansouri was tortured for 45 days while jailed in Sana'a. He and two other journalists convicted to death by the Houthis in 2020 were kept in solitary detention and tormented for several weeks. Reporters Without Borders denounces the abuse and informs the United Nations Special Representative for Yemen that the lives of the journalists being kept hostage are at risk. Three of the four journalists convicted to death by the Houthi rebels in 2020 were tortured for at least 45 days in detention. Tawfiq al-Mansouri is one of them. Since August, the prison administration has often pulled him from the cell he shares with other inmates, subjecting him to torture and violent beatings before placing him in a solitary confinement cell for extended periods of time. RSF has learned that al-Mansouri has a fractured skull and is not receiving the necessary medical care. Abdul Khalik Amran and Harith Humaid, two of the three other journalists facing the death penalty, have also been tortured and kept in isolation cells for undisclosed reasons. These are cramped, windowless basement cells at Sana'a's main prison, where they have been confined since 2020 with no access to hygiene amenities. They are not getting enough food and they are not getting medical treatment or monthly phone calls. The four journalists were kidnapped by the Houthis in 2015 and sentenced to death in 2020 by a court that was not recognized by the international community. This court convicted them unjustly of creating and maintaining many sites and pages on the internet and on social media, with the goal of disseminating false and harmful information and rumors. The Houthis are presently holding 9 journalists captive in northern Yemen. Several of them have served their sentences but are still being jailed pending a prisoner swap. On December 7th, Yunus Abdus Salam, a journalist who had been unlawfully detained for 15 months and had been tortured and abused in jail, was ultimately released by the Houthis.